right, well, for the sake of time and because this is being recorded, so anyone who joins subsequently can always look back on our thrilling first few minutes. So hello, everyone. Great to see you all. Happy September, the end of the beginning, if you will, of the school year. For those of you who don't know me, I am Anna. I'm the CEO of the Northeast Charter Schools Network. I'm thrilled to be joined today by awesome members of my team, including Natasha Cherry Perez, who's Chief of Staff of the New York Charter Schools Association. I will also say, need to give an acknowledgement to Mike Good. For those of you who don't know him, he has been the phenomenal Director of School Support, and we are really sad to see him go, but excited to continue to work with him in his next endeavor. And we are currently looking for someone who can fill his big shoes, but also just want to take a moment and acknowledge and thank Mike. He is truly the master of ceremonies of so many things that we at the association do to support all of you, including these webinars. So if you have ever taken solace in a 4 o'clock on a Tuesday, you have Mike to thank for it. And so just want to give him a quick shout out. We're also, as always, super appreciative to be joined by the state's authorizers and a special guest that we're excited to host today. So Lisa Long, Executive Director of the Charter Schools Office at SED, Catherine Connell Espinosa, Executive Director of the SUNY Charter Schools Institute, Reza Schwanbeck, Senior Director of Authorizing at the New York City DOE, whose name I will never mispronounce again, Erin Cochran, Senior Executive Director of Policy and Operations at New York City DOE, and Corey Callahan, General Counsel and VP of Legal Policy at the New York City Charter School Center. So we hope everyone has had a successful start to the new school year. It's so lovely to see pictures of your students and staff coming back to school these past few weeks. It's just so heartwarming, and in particular, I don't know if it will ever stop feeling really lovely to see that excitement of kids in person after those years that will be etched on our memory where that was not the case. Also, excited to celebrate the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month, which officially began last Friday. We're super excited to celebrate and acknowledge alongside you all. And so please, if there are special events or things that you're doing over the course of the month, please share your pictures and stories, tag us on social media, and email our comms team. We're dropping the information on how best to do that in the chat. I will also give a quick plug. Amy McGeady, our Senior Director of Communications, recently launched a communications working group. So if you are the person who is doing the tagging on social media or thinking about these things from a comms perspective, you should also reach out to her to introduce yourself, because she's pulling together a working group of folks just like you, which we're excited for her to do. So a quick couple of updates before we jump into our feature presentation, which will feature Marlo Cochran, Chief Information Security Office at SED's Office of Information Security, to talk about securing school and student data. And I'll just give like a quick mini plug on this. I've actually, interestingly, coincidentally, had conversations with a couple of you in the course of the past month or so about some combination either of having been a potential target of a security breach or fielding questions in the process of a comptroller's audit about the potential for being the target of a security breach. So it's a particularly timely topic, and we're super excited. Marla, we appreciate you being willing to take the time. So with the school year in full swing, we want to kick off today's call by sharing our list of upcoming programming. Not going to list it all. We're trying to make these these intros a little bit shorter. So there's going to be a link in the chat to review all of the upcoming program and event opportunities. Also, our thinking here is copy this link and send it to anyone and everyone in your school community to whom it would be particularly relevant or who might be interested in attending. Also, by way of update, on September 7th, Governor Hochul signed 2 bills into law that we want to put on your radar. So the first is definitively applicable to charter schools. It has charter schools in the language, and it amends the education law to require all school districts and charter schools to provide information to parents and students about the availability and benefits of AP courses that your school offers on an annual basis. And you have to provide that notice either both electronically or by mail and post it on your website. So specifically, you have to state the benefits of participating in AP courses, a description of the courses you're offering in both the current and the upcoming year, which I know, in some cases has the potential to add complexity, and how to prepare and enroll in AP courses, as well as a description of the academic and non-academic supports provided, including any financial assistance information. So for example, if students don't have to pay to take the test, if the test is required, that sort of thing. We are actually going to develop a template that you all can use and plug in your school specific information as a basis for making this information available. So again, hats off and thank you to Amy and her team, and be on the lookout. We'll be getting that out to you all shortly. The second piece of legislation is less specific in the context of whether or not it applies to charter schools, in that it doesn't include charter schools in the language of the legislation itself. And Corey, I'm belatedly realizing I should have picked your brain on this, but it also amends the education law, and it requires that high schools or districts, districts that serve high schools, include peer-selected student governments. So if you do not currently have some sort of student government structure that students can participate in selecting the participants, and you serve a high school, the legislation requires that those be begun. But I'm sure we can discuss that more as part of the later part of the webinar, because it was not specific in the actual language of the law that it does apply to charters. I do think it falls into the category of the sort of thing that ideally to the extent that it's possible, it is a good thing, and to the extent that it's not possible, we and Corey and her team can help you explore the best way to explore and message that. And speaking of additional clarification, in this case, the absolute lack of clarity and policy for the first time in a few years, we've been fielding a lot of questions from schools about the latest COVID-19 guidance from the state, or from even localities, and quite frankly, the lack of that guidance. And so, Erin, I hope it's okay, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. If we can ask you to speak to, in particular, the New York City DOE's perspective on this, and Raisa, you as well, and Lisa, if NYSCD has a perspective. I will just share personally that I received a totally nothing burger of a communication from my children's district school that basically said, if your kids are sick, they should stay home. And if the nurse thinks they're sick at school, they'll be sent home. Period, end of sentence, end of story. So it's definitely some combination of back to normal and a whole new world. So also, last quick reminder, the State Charter Schools Conference is less than a month away. Please join us in Albany. We're gonna, for folks who don't know, we try to move the conference around the state so every one of your peer schools feels the love. And a big highlight is the ability to visit the schools in the local area. So there's a full event agenda on our website, and the link is being shared in the chat. So I'll turn it over to Lisa, Catherine, Raisa, Erin, and Corey for updates. And maybe because I name checked them so hard and first, Erin and Raisa, if you guys would want to potentially lead off.
Yes, sure. But I'm wondering if, Erin, if you want to comment on the COVID updates at the DOE.
You got it. All right, so I will kick us off. Good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for being off camera. Yes, so in terms of the COVID-19 policy, I am not an expert on the health things, but my understanding of the latest is that the situation room reporting for individual cases is no longer happening if you are in DOE space. And in private space, there's no longer individual case reporting as well. If you have a cluster of cases of COVID or any other contagious disease, it would fall into the normal kind of Department of Health reporting where you have to report just general clusters of any kind of disease. In terms of what to send home, it really is your own best judgment. As a parent, I greatly appreciate knowing if there is COVID in my kid's classroom, just so that I can make appropriate choices to visit grandma that day or not. But there is no longer a requirement that you send home specific notification. And then in terms of other updates, so a reminder to all New York City charter schools that the school quality report data submission is due end of day on Friday. There will not be any extensions. This is a requirement for all DOE authorized schools, and it is strongly recommended for all New York City charter schools because this is a public facing report that is linked from your entry in the DOE's Find a School map. And so we just strongly recommend submitting the data so that families that might be perusing all of those resources will have an accurate representation of your program. And then next week, we will be kicking off the middle and high school collection. We are already thinking about enrollment for the 24-25 school year. So if you have students that will be participating in the district middle school application process or the district high school application process, be sure to watch an upcoming Charter Schools Weekly. I believe those are all the updates that I have for today, but if you have any questions for us, please pop them in the chat. I'll kick it over to Raisa.
Thank you so much, Erin. So a couple of updates for you all from the authorizing world of mine. So all 10 schools who are up for renewal from the NYC DOE authorized schools have been received. We have gone through all the renewal applications and are currently in the process of sending feedback to schools on some of the missing information that schools submitted. So we are going to do that before we start scheduling fall visits for all 10 schools. And as a reminder to our non-renewal schools, as well as to our renewal schools, there is a next set of deadlines to submit information, and that deadline is October 2nd. You can find exactly what those documents are when you log into CHIP. Thank you. That's it from me.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well and having a great start to your academic year. In terms of updates, I think everyone knows by now that last week, the 2023 grades 3 to 8 ELA and math data were made available, and that data is going to remain embargoed until the public release of the data in the state report card on the department's data site. And that annual release will occur later this school year. So until then, you know, that data is just for use in the school. No, you know, media and discussions outside of your schools. In terms of renewals, we received 28 renewal applications, and we are in the process of, in a similar, you know, spot as Raisa said, we are reviewing those applications and preparing to schedule visits to those schools. So we have a busy renewal season ahead and look forward to getting out in the schools soon. And that's it. I will toss it to Catherine.
Thank you, Lisa. It is always a pleasure to be with this group, and I will certainly echo Lisa's comments and hope that everybody is having a great start to your 23-24 academic year. I have two updates, the first being specific to SUNY authorized schools. Want to let SUNY schools know that this year the student applications will actually be due to the Institute on November 1st. That is a change from previous years when they have previously been due on or around January 1st. And the intention is to allow schools more time to incorporate any necessary changes or updates to the application, coming up well in advance of the lottery. So if you have any questions, please reach out to the Institute. John Flack is always happy to answer any questions that folks may have. The second update is more general in nature as we are looking ahead to 2024 and a new charter RFP that will include a New York City based applicant round. The Institute is going to host a general webinar at noon on October 4th for any groups that are interested in potentially applying for a new charter, either in response to the 2024 RFP or even in a future round. The goal is to review the Institute's charter application process, share some effective practices that can contribute to a strong application, as well as advice from some previously approved charter applicant groups. And as always, allow ample time for questions and any challenges that folks are considering. So Mike's going to put the link in the webinar if he hasn't already. I can see that he did. But if any folks have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to the team as well at charter.newapp@suny.edu. And I will also throw that into the chat as well. And that is it for me, Mike. So I think, Corey, you are now up.
Catherine. So the only quick thing I wanted to bring up is open meetings law. We've seen a bunch of emails from folks. So New York City, as I think the New York City schools remember, had been living under a longer state of emergency from the mayor than the rest of the state, which had ended in 2022. The mayor's executive order declaring a state of emergency due to COVID did end. Obviously, we know that there has been an uptick in cases, so we've been watching because it would be very easy for them to bring it back. But as of right now, they have not. So that means for all intents and purposes, schools are needing to meet the requirements of open meetings law, which there are several options. If folks need info on what those options are to make sure you're in compliance, you can always reach out. I know there's a bunch of stuff that's circulated around, we've stuff, the state association. So anyone needs help, but yes, for right now, I would say, and maybe forever, hopefully there's no other disaster such as, such that would require you all to have to not meet in person. We are back to just the status quo with the opens meetings law. And kick it back to you, Anna.
Well, and I will withhold my non-New York City resident commentary about how New York City sort of is always a state of emergency. Now that it's like officially walked that back, it's like it's a better look. I'm not gonna lie. So before I introduce and turn it over to Marlo, want to open it up for questions. And I will say, Lisa, I so appreciate that you mentioned the embargo test results. I will say you did walk right into that one. And so if I'm thinking of a number and it's before December 31st, can you give us any any bigger than a bread box sense of when those results might be made public?
I cannot, but I will look into it because I had just been asking, when is it going to be released? And they actually, the last time I asked, they released it that same day. So I, did not say, well, now when is it going to be final? But I will ask.
Well, go flex, girl. We're behind you.
Okay.
Oh, terrific. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions before I introduce our focus topic for today?
Well, I do want to address that there is one question in the chat off this
Thanks.
embargo test.
What did I miss?
And this is directly to Constance's question here. about reporting scores in their NICEAD annual report update that's due soon. Can you just provide clarity if it is okay to use those embargoed for internal school reporting? I know that this cannot be publicly shared, but in the case that Constance is discussing her NICEAD annual report, is it proper to use those 22, 23 scores for that purpose? And if anyone can weigh in on that.
Yeah, so Lisa, what do you think? If SED isn't giving out the scores, what should people put in their annual report? Like a TTYL, like smiley face, emoji smiley face?
You know, we had a similar question the other day. Let me just speak with Rose and see what her recommendation is.
Thank you. And sorry to put you on the spot. Appreciate you being an internal advocate on behalf of these schools. Catherine, can you speak to the question that Jonathan's asking for SUNY authorized schools? Is it okay to use the data in the SUNY APPRs?
I mean, so what we will do is we'll push back the date in APPRs, right? So functionally we had extended it with them, you know, with the information not being due on the 15th. So you know, if anybody has any questions specific to how they should frame it, they should reach out directly to Sinjin, because he can give you really any information that you need. The high schools are still encouraged to submit as is, but you know, the other everybody else, we will have the extension in there.
Thank you. And so Ellen asked a great question, which for the sake of people who might not be in front of their screen, I will just read out. There was a grant opened under the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act Stronger Connections grant program. At first it appeared that this was not open to charters, then it was changed to be open to charters. Is there a place where charters can identify grants that are available to them under the New York State Department of Education? Lisa, I'm gonna go ahead and say, let's take that offline and potentially talk to Valerie, who, if those of you who don't know Valerie Kowalski, she is a gem of a person. And I think that there definitely could be a way that we can improve communication flow and create a repository for that information.
Agreed. I was just scrolling through the crowd to see if Valerie was with us, but she does not appear to be.
But she may be at the conference. So those of you who want to meet the rock stars of the state education department, not only Lisa, resident rock star, and her team of liaisons, but all of the many people, including Marlo, who I will shortly introduce, highly recommend that you join us at the conference. Being that it's located in Albany, it's going to be a star-studded cast of all the people you need to know from the state education department. Stacy's question is, can anyone discuss the emergency remote plans now required? My understanding, Stacy, is there are not any, but Raisa, Lisa, Aaron, Corey, thoughts, amendments to that bold statement?
I can jump in here. So if there are any New York City charter schools, for whatever reason, you follow you have UFT staff or whatever that have to follow the DOE calendar by choice or by mandate. The DOE, as part of our calendar, has built in remote learning as a potential way to save a school day in the event of needing to close because of smoke or COVID or snow or whatever reason. So if you are in the group of schools that would be impacted by that, where for whatever reason you don't have the flexibility to add on a day or you don't have extra days built in, then it would be, it would make sense to have a remote learning capability built in so that if the DOE cancels school and you are also required to cancel school, you are now no longer potentially below the threshold for days and minutes. Stacy, safety plan requirement. Good call. I'm not aware of that one. If you want to forward something to me directly, Stacy, that would be helpful. We can look into that. That would be for DOE co-located building schools that Stacy's talking about.
Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, Aaron. It feels like the good old days. All of the COVID questions, just keep on coming. Any other questions?
Making me want to pull out all my hats, Anna.
Too soon. I was gonna say, I'm sorry. Sorry, too soon. Too soon. Other questions? Okay. So moving into our focus topic for today, which I hesitate to say I'm excited about because it's not something that one should get excited about, but very timely and important, and so grateful for Marlo. So data security and privacy has been one of the issues that's really been an issue, and for some schools has actually become an emergency issue in a couple of circumstances, as well as everyone grappling with the best way to navigate new rules regarding data security, in particular through Ed Law 2D, which I know we've talked a lot about, and I think people have been doing their best. Marlo, you heard it here first. Charter schools want to be in compliance with this and have been trying hard to navigate that process. So super excited to have Marlo Cochran, the Chief Information Security Officer at SED's Office of Information Security. He's going to speak today about the efforts to secure school and student data and what the field should know about this. Marlo's been working in the IT field for over 30 years with 20 plus years in information security. He has worked in multiple sectors from government to healthcare. And at SED, he currently collaborates with internal and external stakeholders to modernize technology and data sharing. He oversees data risk assessment and management, incident response, development of policies and procedures, and manages the overall risk posture of the agency, which is no small gig. So Marlo, with that, I will turn it over to you, and thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you, Anna. Can everyone see my screen? That's awesome.
Yes.
So before I actually jump into speaking about data privacy, someone had made mention about disasters, and I just want to provide a reminder or a new thing for everyone. If your school is facing a natural disaster, please contact me, because we have resources in regards to providing you resources and help to pay for some of those natural disasters. And if you don't remember me after this meeting, please contact Lisa, and then she could contact me, and we'll help you walk through what resources are available to you. I know that's different. That's a totally different hat from what you just heard, but that is another function that I do within the agency. So just want to make sure that you all knew that, because there's flooding in certain areas and other things that will occur, and we will need extra funding now and again. So with that being said, my name is Marlo Cochran, as you know, and these are just some of the bullet points we're going to speak about today to gloss over. So the Chief Privacy Officer, Luis DeCandia, dictates, along with Ed Law 2D, what needs to be protected in the guidance on the security tools and measures that we use for Ed Law 2D in Part 121. Working with the Chief Privacy Officer, it is up to my office to review the security posture of the educational agencies to ensure that they have the proper security controls in place, and if not, because of the technology, some compensating controls with the goal of getting the recommended industry standards in place. So what does that mean? Right? If I'm not sure if many of you worked with Marlene Derminio with the level 2s and level 0s. However, she's worked with a lot of the districts and the BOCES and RICS to get their security posture up to date. And that in itself just to give you an idea, it took a couple of years because one, there's not enough resources and there is not enough funding to provide, everything and get everything updated all at once. So therefore, it takes some time. So I want you to understand that it takes time. And I'm going to go over what that security review looks like a little bit later. So as you see here on the screen, I'm an officer 2. I have myself and I have one full-time staff named George Ventura, who handles the information security related events in-house. In addition to that, we have a team of consultants that work with us on IT security related projects, as well as troubleshooting incidents as well. So as mentioned, we are an office that works with internal and external stakeholders, and some of the things that we do internally, you just actually heard, but just to clarify, we do work on security awareness training. We provide that to the agency, and we provide other resources like newsletters as well, and just different tidbits depending on what's out there in the world to the agency. We also review contracts. We review the front end, and we focus on the data and security requirements of those contracts. We review software and users license agreements. And this is software that are not default software that are typically put on all computers. Once in a while, we may have a program office that needs a software that is specific to that office. So we will review that software, working with the Office of Counsel to ensure that there's nothing in that language that will put SED at a disadvantage or in a bind legally. Other things we do is we provide guidance, and we collaborate with the internal program office in regards to that modernization of the technology, as well as the data sharing. And we already mentioned the risk assessment management. Now, one of the things we also do is externally, we provide guidance to our external stakeholders. And that is typically via email or via a phone call, depending on the situation. So we collaborate with our external stakeholders in regards to data sharing and risk management. And unfortunately, but fortunately, we also participate in investigating data and systems incidents when there is either an incident that did occur or a suspected incident. And some of the things can be what I call is very small, if you will, is just sending an email to the wrong email address with some PII or confidential information in it. And then it can be as large as a cyber attack and encryption of servers and things that related to that. So it's a whole gamut that we do help and participate in. And then once again, we provide cybersecurity incident response resources to the field through memos and conferences. Now, what is a data security review? So during the first quarter of 2024, and it's not exactly day one, but just to give you an idea of the quarter of 2024, my office will be reaching out to educational agencies, and you see the definition here of who's included in that bucket of educational agencies. And we will be doing or providing a security review of that educational agency security controls. I heard someone mention there were questions by some of you in the field in regards to the OSC audit. That's what brought this full circle. This was something that we were planning on doing, but due to the OSC audit, and nobody's perfect, right? So the OSC, they're going to find something, right, for us to improve upon. Being that we are receiving the reports from the OSC audits from everyone in the field, we're compiling data to see what are the common items that need to be improved upon, as well as the outliers. And with that, we're going to be working with you as a partner. So this is not an audit, this is a review of your security posture. And we're working with you as a posture to take a look at the security controls that you have in place to protect systems, applications, and data that may have student, teacher, principal, PII stored on them, or any confidential information, as well as the information that's being shared through them. An example would be for databases or servers or applications that you may have. We're looking to see what type of password management do you have on these type of systems. We also are looking at, do you have a policy for onboarding and offboarding accounts to these particular systems? When you have a staff member that is probably leaving your program, your school, to go to work somewhere else, or if they even are being transitioned from one position to another that no longer need access to these systems. We're taking a look at those type of policies. We're also really gearing and looking at, and you're going to hear this one on, or see it rather on the next slide, in regards to how data is being shared with your third parties. Because as you know, as of late, the last couple of years, we've seen a bunch of huge breaches with the third party organizations. Not the result of any of the schools, but it's the partners that we have, right? So we also have to ensure that they have a secure security posture as best as possible. Nothing is perfect, but we like to minimize the impact these breaches will have on us. Other things we will be looking at are in general policies. Some of these policies are acceptable use policy, your password policy, incident response policy, disaster recovery policy, and privacy and security policy. We also are going to look to see if you have multi-factor authentication on your systems or implement it within your environment. These things, once again, are things that we've come across and noticed that they're very beneficial for the schools and the EAs as a whole. And some EAs do have them, some do not. So we are working with you to ensure that we get you as close as possible to that line of having a foundation that you can actually stand on, so you can withstand an attack when it does occur. And unfortunately, it will occur. It's just the type of impact it's going to have on you when it does. So moving on, NICE's privacy office is Luis DeCandia is appointed the Chief Privacy Officer as of December 23rd, 2021. And Luis' office is comprised of 3 people. She has one more person than me, right? So it's Luis, Tanya Davis, who is the ethic officer, and you have Robin Catrona, who does 100% of the privacy work. So many of you have probably already heard from Robin or spoken to Robin, if not Luis, in the past. And as you see, the privacy office, just as well as my office, work with internal, external stakeholders. And more so, if you look at the work that we do, there's a lot of overlap, right? Internally, Luis provides the training guidance to the SCD staff, review all SCD contracts, the front and back end. And the focus point for Luis' office is the privacy requirements, whereas mine was the security. And she maintains supplemental prepared data use protection agreements and assists the IT office as well as my office with guidance. And as you see, she has other duties with FOIL requests, and she oversees our data governance board, among other things. Now, externally, you see that she provides the guidance through the privacy mailbox, once again, unless you happen to reach her or Robin on the phone. And they provide information in regards to just a multitude of issues in regards to contracting, working with vendors, privacy, and data issues, right? They also investigate and write determinations on parent privacy complaints and respond to data incident reports, which are the basis of the annual report that she provides to the commissioner, and reviews and investigates third-party contractor breaches. As kind of similar to what I just made mention, we work in conjunction, and she runs the Data Privacy and Advisory Committee, DPAC. And she too provides newsletters and conferences, and a lot of those go out to the DPOs via a listserv that she has available. So this is the big topic that most of us hang on, right? Is Ed Law 2D in Part 121. So for most of you, if you weren't aware, Ed Law 2D became effective in March 31st, 2014, and Part 21 was effective January 2020. Who's impacted? The same educational agencies that I have on my slide is impacted by Ed Law 2D, and the main focal point, once again, is the student PI protected, as well as teacher and principal PI relating to the annual professional performance reviews. Why Ed Law 2D? What's the big hang up with Ed Law 2D, and why are we pushing it, and why are we doing all these things? Well, as you see here, it's a whole bunch of highlights in regards to Ed Law 2D, and I'm not going to dive too deep into them because I want you to understand it in the interest of time also. I can tell you this is, as of July 19th, 2023, a memo, hopefully you received the memo, explained it to the field that the privacy office will be monitoring your websites. What does that mean? In Ed Law 2D, in Part 121 of the Regulations of the Commissioner of Education, the privacy officer are looking at websites to see, one, items I'm about to make mention, but what's the ease of getting to these items? So some places, some websites have these items, but it's very difficult to navigate to get to it. And I say that because we've done it, and it's been difficult, and we know what we're looking for. So what are the items the privacy officers are looking for? They're looking to see if there's a parent's bill of rights on the website. Is there information as to how parents or eligible students can file a complaint? And this may be included in your educational agencies, in your parents' bill of rights. Is the supplemental information to the parents' bill of rights for any contract or other written agreement with a third-party contractor that will receive PII information on the website? Is the educational agency data security and privacy policy that implements the requirements of Part 121 and aligns with the NIST cybersecurity framework published? And FERPA. Beautiful. We love FERPA, right? Is the FERPA annual notification available on the website? And if it's not, the privacy office may ask you how the educational agency is providing notice to parents and eligible students of the rights under FERPA. And please note that a link to the United States Department of Education FERPA website and or a link to a board education policy on privacy does not constitute the FERPA annual notification. So just keep that in mind when getting your FERPA notification on your website. Another question is the education agency directory information policy available on the website? And if not, the privacy office once again may ask, well, how is that educational agency providing public notice to parents and eligible students of the educational agency directory information policy, or the parent's rights to refuse, opt out of any or all other types of information determined to be directory, and the method, including a time period to notify the educational agency. So this is at a glance just some of the things that they're looking at when they're reviewing the websites. Now, there are 700 plus schools. So the privacy office, as well as my office, are not going to tackle and be able to reach every school at every single moment. However, it's going to take some time, and we just don't know which ones we will be tackling at that time. So it's good to make sure that you have everything in its place that's necessary. I mean, this list that I share with you is just a small snippet. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself in regards to the security review, or to Luis' office in regards to the website review. So some privacy resources that I have listed here is, one, you can join the Student Data Privacy Consortium, and this consortium will assist you with data protection agreements. And if you need more information, feel free. I'm going to share an email address with you. Feel free to reach out to the privacy office, and they'll give you the information that's necessary. And that goes the same to say, NYSET is providing FERPA training. It will be provided on October 11th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. If you would like to attend, please email the privacy training at nyset.gov. This email address is different from the one I'm going to show you in regards to Student Data Privacy Consortium. And just a reminder, you all are subject to the Privacy Office monitoring your website. So just keep that in mind, and it's better to be proactive if you can. We understand that everybody has a lot of things going on, a lot of shortage of resources. So if we can start slowly implementing these things, the better, and it saves you on time. Here you have our contact information. You have Luis, Chief Privacy Officer, phone number to contact her office, and the email address. And next you have my office, my phone number, my name, and my email address for my office if you need any assistance with anything, or you have any questions, or if you have any questions on what I had discussed and shared with you today. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Not wanting to cut across those questions, but want to give a huge thank you, Marlo, because I will say, I'll reiterate something I said at the top, which is that my personal experience of this topic is that the charter sector deeply wants to align with all of these best practices for the sake in particular of their students and their families. And there have been times in the past where it has felt particularly complex to understand the best way to do that. And so I'm just gonna ride out and say, we'll reach out to you offline and potentially come up with a checklist that we can share out with the sector so that people can do a self-assessment of their website, knowing that this review is coming. And it's particularly timely because we, in the context of the communications working group I was talking about earlier, we're talking about that sort of self-assessment for schools outside of these requirements. But I would also double down on what Erin added in the chat. So for the people, for the sake of people who aren't in front of their screen, it's absolutely critical that you have some clarity for how to make a complaint, including your complaint policy, right? So how to make a complaint doesn't mean an open invitation to every crazy person who comes across your website. But if people don't know how to appropriately make a complaint the right way, they will make it to everyone else in the world, including this guy.
Yeah, including messaging me directly on LinkedIn because they can't figure out how to contact your board. So yes.
Yeah.
Snap,
so Marlo,
snap for the complaint policy.
Okay, great. And this is so I think there are some ways that, Marlo, I'm just going to say, when people hear auditing your website, like there's a little bit of a like, but I think there are ways that it can be really positive and actually supportive of school leaders and families. And so I'll reach out to you offline, and I think we can come up with something maybe that schools can do a self-assessment, and we can continue to support schools around all other 2D topics. And as Mike put in the chat, if you're not in front of the chat, we do have resources around the Parent Bill of Rights, the data security privacy policy, contract information. So if you're sort of picking this up for the first time, or you picked up 2D a few years ago and put it down because it felt too daunting, you know, I think, Marlo, we can partner, and the association is ready to help anyone. Yeah, so Melinda is also saying make sure your website is ADA and ADA accessible, which I think most developers at this point largely are. But that we're, like I said, this is perfect timing in a variety of ways. So I didn't mean to cut across any potential questions. But Marlo, huge thank you. Really appreciate this.
You're quite welcome. And I do want to add that we will be sending out a memo, so it's not going to just be like knock, knock, hey, we're here. We will send out a memo also stating what I've shared with you today, so that therefore it's almost like a reminder, like, oh yeah, and remember, we're not auditing, we're reviewing to work with you. So when you do have an audit, if OSC haven't come to you yet, you're a bit more prepared if you already aren't prepared, because it's a team effort.
I super appreciate that, both in fact and in sentiment, and that anyone else aside from me said out loud, if you have an OSC audit, you will have a finding. But I think think that this is definitely risen to the top of my list in terms of comparing notes across the sector of the sorts of things that are becoming consistent enough. So appreciate SED getting out ahead of it and creating a consistent approach, and we'll work together to help people be prepared, not just from a compliance perspective, but again, because it's good. It's the right thing to do. It's good for students and families. So super appreciate it. Great to meet you. See you at our conference. Oh. All right. So for the sake of folks who are not on screen, Ellen is asking, the comptroller's office operated special audits last year. Certain schools were captured and their audit objective was cybersecurity and privacy. Will we have to go through your review this year if you were an object of that audit last year? That was a special audit, not an annual, not a 5-year audit?
That's a great question. And interesting enough, those are the schools that we're looking to meet with first, because we did receive those reports from the schools that the comptroller has visited. So we want to work with those schools specifically to see, okay, what can we do to get them past that line or close enough to that line? Because it was brought front and center to the comptroller's attention and our attention. So, I mean, and certain things are easier to rectify and other things may take some time. So we want to help people work out and build a roadmap to reaching that goal or closing the gap.
Great. Well, I see a future email conversation between Ellen and Marlo. That's my crystal ball. And I'm just also going to go ahead and say my crystal ball, Lisa, says that state test results will be public before Thanksgiving. Just throwing it out there. Halloween. Okay. All right. I don't gamble, but.
I already put the question out, but I don't have an answer yet. So.
We appreciate you.
We'll see.
Well, with that, I will thank all of you for your participation. Our partners in crime and non-crime across the authorizing groups. And sorry, that was a terrible joke. I should never say partners in crime to people who work for state agencies. Thank you again. As always, we will see you all back here next month. But in the meantime, be on the lookout for great future collaborations like Lisa getting the state test results released tomorrow, Marlo and Anna producing an audit checklist for your website, and other fun features, including running great schools every single day for the rest of the school year. So thank you guys as always, and hope to see you in Albany next month. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.